Hello and welcome to another episode of PRSay. This is the Houston chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. We have our very own podcast where we have an opportunity to connect with members in our chapter, learn about what they're up to, and make sure that you have an opportunity to connect and network because we are all here to support each other. So we will go ahead and start this episode. We've got a great guest, but before we do, I want to remind you to hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes of PRSay. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, drop us some comments. So with that, I'm going to invite Carla Newman to the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here.
Oh, so excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Carla, where you're at, and a little bit about your background in public relations.
Yeah, so I'd say public relations is about my fifth career pivot, which I think has enriched my experience and hopefully some insights into the other side of public relations. So I'm a recovering journalist. I began my career in nonprofit in Washington and then went to journalism school when I realized that storytelling was really my calling. And so it just fit me like a glove, everything about it. So I studied multimedia, broadcast, print, online, and the very early days of digital media. So, and then I went to work in Europe for a while, and I discovered that I couldn't make a living as a freelancer. So I went into corporate communications, corporate marketing, worked for some major brands like Unilever, a major bank, and Shell. And then went to Southeast Asia and was part of a startup public radio station, the first of its kind in the region. So, and then I came to Houston. So this is about my fifth pivot, and I'm so delighted to be a part of an organization called Legacy Community Health. So we have over 60 clinics in the greater Houston Gulf area. We're a nonprofit. We serve almost 350,000 community members every year. And so I'm essentially their chief storyteller, senior director of public affairs. So,
That's awesome.
yes.
I love that. And I love how you took your natural gift of storytelling and was able to use it in different parts of your life. Tell us about what that looks like. So you were, you trained as a journalist. You were in the early days of digital media. Now you're in corporate communication. Tell us a little bit about how that thread of storytelling has really evolved for you as a professional.
Well, I mean, in the way that I approach public relations or public affairs is through people and is through stories. And so I don't think like an institutionalist, I think like an audience. And
Mm.
so and then I put myself in the shoes of the producer or the editor, because I've been all of those. And I only pitch stories that I myself would have found intriguing or unusual or coming from a different perspective, something fresh, something emotional, and something relatable. And so that's really been the core of my work, whether it's been corporate or journalism or public affairs, is really putting myself in the shoes of the audience as well as the journalist.
Yeah, that's so true. Now, have you noticed any distinctions in between digital communication? I know you said you started in the early days of it. How have you seen that evolved in the last 10 years or so? Because I think as storytellers, sometimes we get caught up in the structure and don't take into account the medium. And I'd love to hear your perspective of how that has changed.
Yeah, so I mean, in a way, it was unfortunate because I graduated journalism school in 2003 in New York, and the business model that and the way that we were taught to do journalism was essentially broken already.
Mm.
And so we were trained for a world that didn't exist anymore. And I think sometimes that's the same probably for the fields of marketing and public relations. You have to pivot to where the audience is going, but keep in mind that, I always think of it's broccoli and chocolate. You can't only give an audience chocolate and things that are light and fluffy. You also have to educate and inform and teach them something new, but in an entertaining or informative way. And
Mhm.
so I try to keep my stories a nice mix of light as well as hard hitting or impactful, so that it's not all Debbie Downer, or not all, fun and rah rah. So, and I think that makes our reporting that we do and our public relations that stories that we produce, a nice fresh mix. So that
Mhm.
it's whether it's digital or whether we're on TV or streaming service or in a hyperlocal newspaper, that it's still about people. And so it's just
Yeah.
we have less time to do it. And
Yeah.
so in a way, we have to cramp our formats to fit the appetite of the audience for how they want to absorb stories. And so, coming from radio, I love the radio medium because it allows us an intimacy and a length and a depth that you don't get in, say, TV or in a YouTube clip or on social media. So really social, it's a bit like a teaser. It gets people the sense of a story, but then you can lead them to somewhere where if they want to learn more or discover more, that there's somewhere for them to go. So I
Mhm.
do believe in that virtuous cycle of driving traffic from, social to the website, to a blog, to some call to action, so that it's not just something interesting that they can scroll through quickly, but I want to make them stop and think
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
feel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love your emphasis on understanding your audience and what they want and where they're at. You mentioned that a couple of different times, and I think that's important because when we decide we want to give them a story as opposed to inviting them into the storytelling part, we lose some of that power. And really, when you think about what you've had to do from guiding them from point A to point B, it does require a lot of strategy. So there's still a lot of strategy behind what it sounds like you're doing.
Yes, and we can't tell the same story the same way. And
Mhm.
so, I have a digital strategy. I've also got a Hispanic media strategy, and for audiences whose first language is not English, I've got a strategy for that. I've got a strategy for web, and blogs, and so everything needs a different touch and a different approach and a different cultural lens. And so I need team members and those from those communities to help educate me and my team as to what resonates with those audiences, so that we're not giving them something they're not interested in, but
Mhm.
we're really relevant and impactful. And so that just takes more thought, I think, and more time,
Mhm.
rather than just rolling out the same strategy across all
Right.
channels, regardless of the preferences, the backgrounds, the interest of that particular audience.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense, and I love that. What, as you're thinking, shifting gears just a little bit, as you're thinking about the new professionals coming in, what do you think they should be considering about the market? You mentioned earlier about how when you graduated, you were the what you were taught was already outdated, right? The model was
Mm-hmm.
outdated. What do you
Mm-hmm.
think young professionals coming in need to be considering or thinking about based on your experience?
Well, I'd say, I noticed a similar thing with MBA students,
Hmm.
is that many of them went from college to get their MBA, and they had no real life experience or tread on their tires. Journalism was different. They wanted us to have at least 5 years of experience out in the world before we came to journalism school. And so I always think that for any profession, like, get out of your profession for a while and try something different. Like, take a sabbatical before you get that full-time job and the mortgage and get married and have those kids. Like, maybe intern at a paper or intern at a TV station, or write for a hyperlocal or an ethnic media, and just really get behind the scenes and understand from the ground up just what it's like from their side. And then that makes you much better at pitching, and you're going to be much more impactful in terms of the stories you're able to land, if you've had that experience, rather than if you've gone straight from college to to an office,
Hmm.
and then only interact with journalists as sort of something to be targeted
Right.
and wrestled into submission,
Right.
which they love, of course. So yeah, and seeing them as people, and they have their own passion projects and their own interests, and really getting to know them as people will help you be much more nuanced in how you pitch and what you pitch. And so I do not
Yeah.
believe in the blanket spray and pray type of pitch where
Yeah.
you just send the same thing to God and everybody. I think it really needs to be targeted and measured and really just hit the right notes for that particular journalist or that particular organization if it's going to be successful.
No,
And
that's
then
absolutely true.
yeah,
So
and
true.
then the other thing is I think get a diverse team to work
Mm.
with, whether or not you're an intern or just starting out, is try to get as many perspectives as you can. So, having lived overseas for 15 years and having to have, had many different experiences like in New York City, where you're diving into other cultures and other languages, other religions, other traditions, it really gives you an empathy for how different people see the world so differently. The same city,
Yeah.
but from a completely different perspective. And so I've always been a big believer in just making yourself uncomfortable, particularly when you're young, and go to places that you would normally never go. Like go for a police ride along. That's something they had us do. And at first I thought it was the dumbest thing ever, but it really made me understand, covering the police as a beat and covering crime, and then going to City Hall and understanding, okay, here's how you go through a police blotter, and here's how you go through court records, and here's how you do court reporting. It's just it gives you a lot more depth, I think, as a public relations professional. Now,
Yeah.
many of us, who may be in our late 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe that's not an option, but go volunteer places. Go just get those experiences that will make you a better professional.
No, I agree. And what I love about that is it also gives you not only those perspectives, but it gives you reference so that when you are writing, whether for digital content or long form or short form, you've got some creativity to pull from, right? Some inspiration. And so I love that because I think that that's something life can give you that you can't read in books or you can't get from a video, you know?
Right. But also, I've seen, particularly in Houston, there's a lot of solo practitioners. And I think that gives them a lot of freedom to do the types of stories and take the types of clients they want. And so, I do think there's that independent streak amongst many of us, where the corporate type of PR, it's maybe not as fulfilling as it once was, or there are life goals have changed. So I just say, maybe train up in an institution so you understand, but then don't be afraid to go out and take some risks, while you
Yeah.
can, because it makes you much more well-rounded as a person as well as a PR professional.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, Carla. That's absolutely great. Well, as we wrap up this episode, Carla, how can people connect with you? You know, we do this podcast so members can network and reach out to folks that they have mutual interests in or could support each other. How do you want people to reach out to you?
Sure. Well, I'm at linkedin.com/IN/Carla Sapsford, SAPSFORD. And I'm at Legacy Community Health here in Houston. So look me up.
Yep.
And I'm always open to inquiries or chats or mentorships. And PRSA Houston, quick plug, is a fantastic
Yeah.
place to further your career development. I mean, even those of us who've been doing this, 10, 20, 30 years, like I learned so much from my colleagues in that organization, and it's a great place to volunteer as well.
Yeah. Excellent. I agree. Carla, thank you so much for joining us on the episode. It was great to connect.
Thank you. And thanks to your audience. Nice to meet you. Bye-bye.
Likewise. All right, that wraps up this episode. Make sure you connect with Carla. Her contact information is there in the show notes. PRSA is Houston. We are committed to making sure that our members have access to each other so we can learn and grow as a community and make our chapter stronger. So, with that, I'm wrapping up this episode. Make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes of PRSay. And if you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, drop us some comments. We'd love to connect. We will see you on the next episode.